President of Graham Corporation. I'm joined by Chris Thome, our CFO, VP of Finance, and then Deborah Pawlowski is our IR consultant. She's sitting there in the back. We're excited to tell you about Graham. But before I start, we're a publicly traded company. So I need to point out that we may make some forward-looking statements during this presentation and in the following Q&A. As you know, those statements are covered under the safe harbor that is provided on this slide. We will also reference some non-GAAP financial metrics, and we have reconciled those metrics to GAAP metrics in the appendix of our presentation. On to Graham. So Graham is a critical equipment supplier. What does that mean? Well, it's equipment that's designed and manufactured for applications that if it fails, it's a problem. So our equipment goes into defense, space, energy, and process industries. Think of it as vacuum systems, heat exchangers, turbo machinery, which are pumps and turbines and compressors. We just announced our third company. We just acquired a third company here in November. And at a corporate level, our mission is to build better companies to deliver superior performance. We do that 4 different areas with our people. So we make sure our people are engaged and are passionate about what they're doing. When we interview these folks, we are really making sure that they love getting into the types of things that they'll be getting into, that they can support the mission of a lot of our applications. So the engaged and the passionate is pretty important. Our culture is all around continual learning, continual improvement, teamwork. So we talk a lot about teamwork and our culture in our company. Our structure at a corporate level, what we're supplying is shared services and strategic oversight and input to our companies. So Chris and I tend to talk to all of our companies, all 3 of them, and coach them on the strategic delivering of their business. And then process, we're growing both organically and inorganically, and we'll continue to. The box below gives you more details around our stock. We're a micro cap at around $20 million market cap. We have engineering and manufacturing locations in Batavia, New York, Arvada, Colorado, Jupiter, Florida, and then we have sales offices in Ahmedabad, India, and Suzhou, China. So we're building equipment in country and then supplying in country to different refineries and petrochem plants in China and in India. Our strategy is to drive steady growth and stronger profitability. So what is steady growth? It's kind of 8 to 10% per year. So my company was one of the companies that got acquired by Graham, and we had grown about 10% per year from 2001 to 2021. So we kind of know what it's all about to grow at that level. Growing faster is scary, it's hard. Growing slower, you're not keeping up. So I like the 8 to 10% per year. Stronger profitability, we lost money 2 years ago. Last year we had 5% EBITDA. This year our guidance is 7% EBITDA. We're moving higher and higher with the goal of getting into low teens, mid-teens EBITDA. Chris will talk a little bit more about that later. We have 4 pillars to our strategy. The first is targeted markets. Let's go after markets where our critical equipment really can make a difference. So that differentiation, that critical application is pretty key for the markets that we pursue. And I'll give you a flavor for that in a minute. The operational excellence, again, I said, we're all about continual learning, continual improvement. And so operationally, we're investing in our processes, in our tools, in our people, and really trying to optimize that along with automated tools. So it kind of goes with the next one, which is elite team with passion. while we work really hard to make sure that we can get the people that fit really well on our team, there's not enough of them. And so you really have to do more of the automation related things. So we're trying to work smart as well as we grow. And then finally, stakeholder engagement. I'll be the first to tell you we don't know all the answers. And so what we do is we keep our ears open to people that we're working with on a daily basis, all of our stakeholders, our suppliers, our board, our communities, and say, you know, how could this work better? And we're taking those ideas and incorporating them if they make some sense for our business. Our biggest customer is the U.S. Navy. And we really like them for a bunch of reasons. One is that they tend to give us long-term contracts. And so these are 3 to 5 year contracts that we can really plan our business around. When you perform, they reward you. So that second bullet around strategic investment, we just got a $13.5 million strategic investment from one of our defense customers that said, look, the U.S. Navy needs to build ships faster, and here's some money to buy more equipment, to increase the size of your plant, your capacity, your throughput, so that you can support us. And that only comes if you're performing. We've got several Navy contracts where we're the sole supplier. So it's not competitive bidding. We can really count on this work for the long term. Now, the downside with that is they get in your books and they figure out, you know, what your costs are, and they don't allow you to make too much money. But at the same time, the next bullet, the margin expansion piece, if you're doing work well, if you're continually optimizing, you can improve your efficiencies and your execution and thus your margins. And so as we bring in automated welders, for instance, and we can have you know, some of the best CNC machines where one person can kind of, you know, make 2 machines run, that's the automation, that's the improvement in efficiency that we're talking about. And then finally, as we look forward, we're really looking at some potential revenue streams in repair and maintenance that we haven't seen in the past. And then finally, the next gen attack submarine is under design right now, and we're involved in that. So we just continue to help our customers engineer those products, get locked in the production, and then on the Navy side, you're ending up with 3 to 5 year kinds of contracts. This is some detail around some of those Navy programs. So 3 major ship classes, the Ford-class carrier, the Virginia-class submarine, and then the Columbia-class submarine. You can see the build plan in that first column, the timeline on how many ships are delivering per year, and then the potential revenue for our companies. And so when you add all of those up, along with a torpedo program that we really can't put on here and tell you numbers, then we're really talking about 1 to 1.3 billion in revenue stream. We have some further diversification on the space side. So Barber-Nichols, one of our companies, got involved with NASA in the 1990s. And they basically combined turbines with cryogenic pumps to make rocket engine turbopumps. And that really got us in on the NASA side. And then pretty much immediately, all these new space companies started to figure out that they wanted to launch their own rockets. So our rocket engine turbopumps ended up going in the first SpaceX launches, the Blue Origin launches, the Virgin Orbit before they went bankrupt, kinds of things. So we got in at the right time into this space environment. Today, what we're doing is providing pumps, turbines, compressors for different applications. So launch vehicles still, some of the satellite cooling, and then the environmental control and life support systems for the backpack that the astronauts wear in space. Last point on this one is the acquisition that we made just a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a week ago, yeah, 2 weeks ago, really deepened our reach into the strategic space area. Legacy Graham has been energy petrochemical, so refining and petrochemical process plants, making vacuum systems and heat exchangers for those plants. We've got about $1 billion of installed base, and that's around the world. So that $1 billion really does provide a nice stream of aftermarket business for us, which really provides some stability to our company also. And then we're getting into more and more new energy types of things. So the hydrogen types of opportunities, the small modular reactor types of opportunities, concentrated solar, and then we get into some of the biodiesel types of applications and sustainable aviation fuel types of applications. So we've got equipment in all of those markets. I'll finish with this graphic. So this is a visual that gives you a sense of our business in kind of one slide. So we kind of group the different market areas into different bubbles. The size of the bubbles gives you a sense of the revenue associated with that. So you see new energy, it's a small bubble. It's a small amount of revenue in our business. You see that DOD and the Navy bubbles, and they're the larger bubbles. So those are higher revenue numbers. And then on the y-axis, we've got growth, and then on the x-axis, we've got differentiation, or more importantly, margin potential. So the best place to be is up and to the right. So you try to push everything up and to the right. So where we are today, new energy is a small market for us, but has nice growth potential, and it's got decent margin at this point. The space is kind of in the same area. DOD are smaller margins at this point, and that's really driven by some of the first article work that we've taken on. So you kind of have to buy into your first contract on DOD projects, and then you make up for it on the next awards of those. And so we'll see those starting to push up and to the right for both the BN, DOD, and the Graham Navy piece. The Graham aftermarket you see there is a nice sized bubble. It's way out on the margin potential x-axis. It's limited in size. It probably doesn't grow a whole lot more, but it's really nice margin. And then the new installation, energy and petchem, kind of down at the bottom, growing probably a little bit slower than global GDP. That can go either to the left or to the right, depending upon market conditions. So if we're in an energy upcycle, you'll see it moving to the right. If we get kind of a slow period and lots of global competition, you'll see it move to the left. And that's really why Graham decided they wanted to diversify and get into more of these markets. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Thome, and he'll tell you more about the acquisition and the financials.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for everyone for joining us here today. Consistent with our strategic plan to pursue growth both organically and inorganically, on November 10th of this year, we announced the acquisition of P3 Technologies, which is a custom turbo machinery engineering and product development company located just north of here in Jupiter, Florida. It's a small operation with about 11 employees, about $6 million in annual revenue, and about $8 million of backlog, but they also have what we feel is a lot of high growth pipeline opportunities. This is highly complementary to our Barber-Nichols turbo machinery business in Denver. It brings with it a higher margin profile, but it also brings with it some proprietary technology in the patented multi-channel diffuser and scamp pumps that they have. They make a whole line of pumps, compressors, turbines, and cryogenic pumps as well. So it's a very nice fit. This really was a really good example, a perfect example of the types of acquisitions we're looking for that are bolt-on, engineer to order, and that bring some proprietary technology to us in the markets they serve. As Dan mentioned, they do service the space, new energy, as well as the medical markets, which is going to be our first exposure to the medical markets, so it does add some diversification. This acquisition is being funded by a new low-cost 5-year, $50 million credit facility that we signed a month ago. So it really provides some low-cost funding for this acquisition. This slide demonstrates the progress that we're making, both in sales and margin improvement. The first quarter results were stronger than expected, and as expected, results normalized in Q2. For the first quarter of our fiscal year ending in March, so it's our second fiscal quarter, we had $45.1 million of sales, which was up 18% over the prior year. This was primarily being driven by a 69% growth in our defense market, as well as a 74% growth in our aftermarket business. This growth is being fueled by better execution, better pricing, and a 14% increase in our direct labor from this time last year. This higher revenue resulted in gross profit of $7.2 million, or a gross margin of 16%, which is up 220 basis points over the prior year. So you can see some of the impacts that some of the initiatives that Dan talked about are having on our financials. Also noteworthy in the second quarter is that we shipped 2 of the last first article units that were associated with our Columbia class and Ford class carrier programs. While we always expect to have a certain amount of first article business in our backlog, going forward, we expect to see normal margin elevation and expansion as these first article programs won't be as big of a portion of our backlog. This increased gross profit drove increased adjusted EBITDA of $2.7 million, which was up 76% over the prior year, which equaled 6% on a margin basis, which was up 200 basis points over the prior year. Similarly, our adjusted diluted EPS increased more than tripled to 13 cents per share. So overall, we're very pleased with the results so far and the improvements that we've made, but we still have a lot of work to do. This slide illustrates our diversified revenue base. If you look at the pie chart on the bottom left, it shows our orders for the second quarter of this year, which was $36.5 million, and resulted in a book-to-bill ratio of 0.8 times. But for the year-to-date basis, our book-to-bill ratio is 1.1, so we have a growing backlog. And that really our orders can fluctuate from quarter to quarter, just given the size and the long-term nature of some of these contracts. So it tends to be very lumpy in nature. But the order breakdown in that pie chart is very similar to our revenue breakdown, approximately 40 to 50% defense, approximately 25 to 30% legacy, refining, and chemical and petrochemical business, 10% in the space business that Dan talked about. And then the other category here represents the new energy category that Dan walked through in hydrogen, small modular, nuclear, as well as geothermal with lithium extraction associated with it. At the end of September, our backlog was $313 million. However, in the first week of October, we announced that we had record orders for October of $110 million. So at the end of October, our backlog was now over $400 million. 80% of that backlog is related to defense, as these, as Dan mentioned, are longer term in nature, higher size, bigger contracts. What we like about that is it does bring a certain amount of visibility and stability to our business versus the legacy oil and gas markets where we had to kind of work through the peaks and valleys. About 50% of our backlog is expected to be shipped in the next 12 months, with another 25 to 30% to be shipped in the year following that. This slide shows the guidance that we've given for year as well as some of our longer-term strategic goals. As a result of the better than expected first quarter results, we raised both our revenue and our adjusted EBITDA guidance in the first quarter, and then maintained and reaffirmed that guidance in the second quarter. For this year, we see about 170 to 180 million of revenue, which at the midpoint would represent 11% growth over the prior year, so slightly above that 8 to 10% growth that we're looking for every year. And on an adjusted EBITDA basis, we're looking at 11.5 to 13.5 million, which would be 7% of revenue at the midpoint of our guidance, which is 200 basis points above what we did last year. So showing some great and nice improvement, slow and steady improvement, which is what we're looking for. We've also guided that our CapEx spend for this year would be 12 million to 13.5 million. A significant portion of this is related to that $13.5 million Navy investment that Dan was speaking about earlier.
4 minutes.
Thank you. And then we can also see on the upper right there some of our longer term strategic goals, which is to, again, hit 8 to 10% organic revenue growth per year, which would put us above 200 million by 2027. And then also by 2027 to get to the low to mid-teen EBITDA margin percentage. So obviously just some nice steady improvement, and we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. And with that, Dan and I would be happy to take any of your questions.
Do you have any particularly proprietary products that
Yes.
are unique to you?
Yeah, so Graham Manufacturing, which is involved in the refinery petrochem, the steam jet injectors that we make there are all proprietary designs. A lot of the surface condensers that we make for those same applications proprietary. Barber-Nichols, all of their turbo machinery pretty much is proprietary. We've given very little of that away. And then our newest company, P3, all of that is proprietary. So the pieces that are not are the things we're not designing, but we're contract manufacturing for the Navy. So like the Navy torpedo parts, we didn't design those. Those are contract manufacturer. For some of the heat exchangers for Navy business, those are Navy design, and so not proprietary. So it's definitely a mix, but there's a good proprietary mix on the commercial side, less on the DoD side.
Would you say your movement towards defense has been a concerted effort on your part with acquisitions to base that? Because during the presentation, you kind of talked about how you had the technology and now it's just starting to be more adapted by others.
We really love the mix. And so the DoD business gives you that long-term manufacturing base that you can build your company on and make sure that you've got the profitability in place to give you stability. And then, the new commercial opportunities are smaller. And so, you'll make money on some, you'll lose money on others, but ultimately the goal is to grow the commercial side as big as the Navy side.
I'll ask another. It's easy to talk about EBITDA margins going to the low teens because of higher profitability, but are there specific things that you are planning to do that will get you there?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. You want to take that one?
Sure. I touched on it briefly with the amount of our CapEx expenditure. That capital expenditure is going to, one, not only increase our footprint by giving us more manufacturing space, but we're also investing in things like automated welding equipment and things like that. The nice thing about the defense work is that when you are sole sourced in nature, the you have to kind of live through the pains of the first article programs, but then once you get through them, future pricing is based upon the hours of the old inefficient units. So as we know, gross profit's a two-sided equation, right? So future contracts are going to be at a higher price, but we should also be able to do it more efficiently as well. So our margin should just naturally improve from that, along with some of the business processes and operational improvements, as well as leveraging some of that overhead with the increased revenue should drive that margin expansion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With more than 6,000 small and micro cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then Channel Check truly is the orchard. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series lunches and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Microcap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since Channel Check is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why Channel Check is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.